Will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-559, offered by Mr. Burchett of Tennessee.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1316, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett, and the members opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm offering this amendment to withhold funding from the United States Agency for Global Media. This agency has misused taxpayer money and also failed properly to vet its own staff. And I want to ask you, Mr. Speaker, is this the policy of this great nation, is to misuse taxpayer money and fail to properly vet its own staff that's allowed to lie on their resumes? Back in January 2021, it was recommended the agency suspend one of its executives, Satara Siege, following an investigation regarding her professional behavior. The investigation concluded that Ms. Siege lied on her resume. She lied. She misused taxpayer dollars for personal expenses and provided lavish contracts for friends. Is this the policy of this country, Mr. Speaker? I ask you. However, just weeks later, and just hours after President Biden was sworn into office, guess what? Ms. Siege was reinstated to her previous position without loss of pay or seniority. The United States Agency for Global Media should be focused on its mission to inform and engage with people around the world in support of freedom and democracy, not a policy of allowing its employees to lie on their resumes, Mr. Speaker. Instead, they are playing political games and misusing our taxpayer dollars. I recommend we withhold funding until a time when the U.S. Agency for Global Media can prove it is capable of removing its employees who have deceitful and irresponsible work histories and is capable of properly vetting its own staff. And I reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Tennessee reserves. The gentlewoman from California.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I claim the time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment. And let me just start by saying, if we're really talking about misusing taxpayer money, remember the Pentagon has flunked 6 audits. This amendment prohibits any funding from going to the U.S. Agency for Global Media, or USAGM. USAGM informs, engages, and connects people around the world, giving them an opportunity for independent media that may not be available in their own country. At a time when more democracies are declining and even sliding into autocracies than any other point in the last century, we cannot afford to cut USAGM programs. Funding for these programs targets programming in the languages of Iran, Russia, and the PRC and other authoritarian states to push back on false narratives about American policies that these adversaries are spreading, and builds the capabilities at USAGM that they need to deliver content to its global audience quickly and reliably. One of the organizations that USAGM oversees, Voices of America, has the audience of more than 358 million people around the world. Their trusted and objective news is translated into 48 languages in order to share the American stories and perspectives that locals would not otherwise have access to. Another organization, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, provides uncensored news in countries where free press is threatened and disinformation is pervasive. These programs are key to outcompeting China and combating Russian disinformation. They are key to our success on the global stage. USAGM's Open Technology Fund provides a range of tools to help audiences overcome internal restrictions, especially in countries like Iran, where the internet can be a lifeline. Through its grantees and federal agencies, USAGM is reaching more than 420 million people weekly, and the great majority of those audiences have reported that they find the information received to be trustworthy. USAGM deserves our continued support, and I urge my colleagues to oppose this short-sighted amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman from California reserves. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the inception of these wonderful organizations that my colleague across the aisle described, I would say they probably they were very effective. I would say now they have very little effect. I can't imagine somebody in one of these countries turns on the radio and decides, hey, I'm not going to go down this path anymore because somebody from another country is on the radio telling me to do otherwise. I find this still, the policy that we have of promoting people who lie, who mistreat others because of political power or their connections, to me is very offensive. And that is exactly why Americans do not trust this town. They do not trust Congress. They do not trust government, because they see people continuously getting ahead in life that cheat, lie, and do things that are inappropriate, things that we would not allow in our own homes, in our own businesses, in our churches or our places of worship. We sure as heck shouldn't allow it in the seat of government, and this continues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
And reserve.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Tennessee reserves. The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I yield back, Mr.
The
Chairman.
gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Tennessee yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Tennessee. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair,